This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
The prosecution has rested in the Brendan Banfield double murder au pair affair trial extravaganza. It kind of feels that way sometimes with some of these cases, doesn't it? Where it's like the titles get so creative. It's like, and clowns ran through the room through rings of fire, trial of the century. But this certainly is one that, if the prosecution's theory is true, I mean, you're one step away from rings of fire and clowns, because the planning, the storyline, the ruse, it's really shocking in this case. The depths to which it went, far deeper than a lot of cases that we see. Sloppily done, if it is what it is, but still, points for creativity. I guess we'll give it that. And the way they chose to end their case, the prosecution, it tells you exactly what they want the jury to remember when they walk into that deliberation room. The blood. 4 days of testimony, 5 witnesses on day 1, 2 days of the au pair laying out an alleged murder conspiracy in excruciating detail. DNA experts, digital forensics, surveillance footage from a McDonald's drive-thru, and when it came time to put a bow on it, prosecutors in Fairfax County Circuit Court spent nearly an entire final day of their case on one thing: what the blood at the crime scene actually says about what happened inside the Banfield home on February 24th, 2023. And we're going to get into all of that. I'm going to catch you up on the case. If you're new to this and you want to kind of get a little background, we're going to do that. Before we do, though, please do press subscribe wherever it is you're listening to us or watching us, whether it's Apple Podcasts or YouTube or iHeart or Spotify or whatever it is. Thank you, number one, if you already have subscribed. You are what makes our engine work, so thank you for that. And if you've not done so already, please join us. We put out tons of reporting every single day. We work our butts off here for you, so we really appreciate it when you subscribe. If you're enjoying our content, thank you for that. And please, have the conversation with us. Be part of this whole thing we're doing. It's not just, watching a television anymore and, speaking out loud to your dog Murphy. You can interact with us. So please let us know your thoughts on the case in the YouTube comments on this video or on our Substack. You can join us now. They're absolutely free for a limited time. hiddenkillers.substack.com. The link is in the descriptions. So if you are just catching up on this case, here's where we are. Brendan Banfield, a former IRS agent, is on trial for the aggravated murders of his wife, Christine Banfield, and a man named Joseph Ryan. Prosecutors allege Banfield and the family's Brazilian au pair, Juliana Peres Magalhães, were having an affair. And that together, they hatched an elaborate scheme to kill Christine so Brendan could start a new life with a nanny without paying for a divorce or sharing custody of their young daughter. Banfield has pled not guilty to all charges. The plan, according to the Commonwealth, was diabolical in its construction. Banfield allegedly created a fake profile on a website called FetLife, a fetish and kink website used by people who are into that. And they allege that he used his wife's photos and identity to create that account. And he spent weeks, allegedly, cultivating relationships with men on the site, thinking that he was her, looking for someone who would agree to come to the house with ropes and a knife, thinking he was participating in a consensual BDSM role play type thing, to put it nicely. The goal, prosecutors say, was to lure a stranger who could be framed for Christine's murder. Someone Brendan could then shoot and claim he killed in self-defense while trying to save his wife from an attacker. I know. That's quite the story, isn't it? A lot of things have to go oh so perfectly right for nobody to catch on that this might be arranged, staged in a certain way. Joseph Ryan was allegedly that stranger, a 39-year-old man who thought he was walking into some sort of encounter. Instead, prosecutors alleged that he walked into his own execution. Juliana Peres Magalhães had already pled guilty to manslaughter for her role in Ryan's death. She admitted to shooting him in the chest. In exchange for her cooperation, the testimony against Banfield, prosecutors have agreed to recommend she be sentenced to time served. She spent 2 days on the witness stand painting a picture of a months-long conspiracy, gun range visits, burner communications, rehearsed alibis, and a carefully choreographed morning that ended with 2 people dead. The testimony is just testimony. It's one person's account. And Juliana Peres Magalhães has credibility problems. The defense has hammered on her inconsistencies in her statements, gaps in her memory, and her motivation to say whatever prosecutors want her to say in order to avoid spending the rest of her life in prison. They've pointed to letters she wrote from jail complaining about her lawyer, expressing resentment towards Banfield, and in one particularly damaging moment, bragging to her family about $10,000, an offer from Netflix for the rights to her story and her desire to negotiate for more money. Because according to her, quote, "We deserve something," she wrote. How? $10,000, that's it to get your story and use them? I suppose you really don't need it, though, either. But if they want you to participate, it still seems like a low payday for a Netflix stock, doesn't it? I don't know. You'd be amazed how little television actually pays people. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, they must be making tons of money over there, unlike network television or documentaries and things of that nature. Unless you're like a really big star, it's like the people you see on a lot of shit, it's like, yeah, you'd be surprised. You would be surprised when you're working for someone else. "We deserve something," she wrote. The defense asked her why she deserved anything after shooting and killing a man. She clarified she meant her family deserves compensation for what she put them through. Yeah, but the damage was done, and the jury heard it. No matter what she says, she thought she meant at that moment in time when she's negotiating. And look, I mean, if you went through this shit show and Netflix is saying, hey, we'd like to, give you some money so we can tell your story too, and you don't really have anything, you might just bite. Why not? Why not? So when prosecutors called bloodstain pattern analysis Iris Dalley Graff to the stand, here's a name. Iris Dalley Graff. "We shall name her Iris Dalley Graff, and she will be a bloodstain pattern analyst someday. Our little baby girl, that will be you." It's a good name. It's powerful. I like it. They wanted to give the jury something clear. Something beyond Juliana's word. Give them science. "And you shall give them science, Iris. Science to silence them." It's probably what happened in that nursery with that Iris. Then this is what she turned out to be. Amazing. Give them evidence that speaks for itself. Because you need that. You need more than just the witness who clearly has a reason to say whatever the prosecution wants them to say. Not saying it can't be true, but, when you got some clear incentive here, it stains it a little. Dalley Graff is a forensic specialist from Graff Investigative and Forensic Training. Her job was to analyze crime scene photographs and explain what the blood patterns reveal about how the killings unfolded. And for hours, she walked jurors through images so graphic that for the first time in this trial, the photographs shown to the public gallery included Joseph Ryan's body still lying where he died. One woman sitting in the victim's family section dropped her head and closed her eyes. She couldn't look. The rest of the courtroom had really no choice. What Dalley Graff told the jury was technical, methodical, and if you believe her analysis, devastating for the defense. Blood, she explained, behaves according to physics. It flows downward with gravity. It splatters in predictable patterns based on velocity and angle of impact. It transfers from wet surfaces to dry ones in ways that can be read like a forensic fingerprint, really. And when you understand how blood behaves, you can often tell when a crime scene has been staged. According to Dalley Graff's analysis, blood from Joseph Ryan's wounds flowed in multiple directions. That is significant because it suggests his body was moved after he was shot. Blood that initially flowed one way based on how he fell would have changed direction if someone repositioned him. The patterns she observed were consistent with exactly that, a body that didn't stay where it landed. But it gets worse. Dalley Graff testified that Christine Banfield's blood appears to have been intentionally placed on Joseph Ryan's body, not splatter from a violent attack, not a natural result of a struggle between an intruder and a victim. Transfer stains. She pointed to several blood stains on Ryan's right leg, parallel transfers that were, in her words, finger-like in shape, the kind of pattern you'd get when someone with wet blood on their hands touches a surface. She described a stain on Ryan's hand the same way. Some surface wet with blood was in contact with the hand, she testified. That blood transferred from the wet, bloody surface to his hand. Blood droplets on his forearm were consistent with dripping from above onto a horizontal surface, as if someone was standing over him, deliberately letting blood fall. This is the prosecution's theory made forensic. Juliana Peres Magalhães told the jury that after Christine was stabbed and Ryan was shot, Brendan Banfield removed Ryan's body and intentionally smeared his wife's blood onto the dead man. The goal, according to her testimony, was to make it look like Ryan had attacked Christine, that he was the killer and Brendan was the hero who stopped him. The bloodstain analysis gave the jury physical evidence that prosecutors argue corroborates that account. Defense attorney John Carroll did everything he could to undercut Dalley Graff's testimony. He objected repeatedly throughout her time on the stand, arguing that prosecutors were leading the witness and that her conclusions were speculative. He pointed out that some of her findings contradicted observations made by homicide detectives at the scene. He challenged her methodology, her interpretations, and her certainty. And he had one particularly effective moment. Carroll highlighted body camera footage from responding officers that showed Brendan Banfield with blood-covered hands pressing on his wife's neck when police arrived. The implication was unmistakable. It's not the behavior of a man who just murdered his wife, Carroll suggests. That's a husband desperately trying to stop the bleeding. That's someone attempting first aid and until paramedics could take over. It's a compelling image, and it's exactly the kind of reasonable doubt Carroll needs to plant in at least one juror's mind. The prosecution's final witness was Gary Benson, Christine Banfield's father. His testimony was brief, lasting only about 15 minutes before the Commonwealth rested, but what he told the court could matter depending on where the defense ends up taking their case. Benson testified that Christine had a medical condition throughout her life that caused her to bleed and bruise more easily than normal. She had frequent nosebleeds as a child, though he couldn't specify the exact diagnosis. The defense asked him about Christine wearing helmets during outdoor activities, about sports she played in childhood and into adulthood. It's not entirely clear yet what Carroll is building towards with this line of questioning. Possibly he's laying groundwork for an argument about the amount of blood at the crime scene, that Christine's condition could explain some of the investigators or what some of the investigators found without requiring the prosecution's theory of deliberate staging. Or perhaps he's setting up expert testimony of his own that will offer an alternative interpretation of the forensic evidence. After the jury was dismissed, John Carroll made his move. He asked Judge Penny, the same judge, incidentally, who presided over Johnny Depp and Amber Heard's defamation trial, to strike all 5 charges against Brendan Banfield and end the trial right there. You see this in every trial. This is not anything new. It's kind of like, you ever go to putt-putt, the miniature golf, and at the end it's like, okay, everybody hit the ball into the special hole and see if you win a free game. That's kind of like what happens in court. After the prosecution's arrest, it's like, okay, here's your ball, here's the butter. Let's see if you can get it through the windmill, through the flaming hoop of fire, and then bounce it off the goat and then into the hole that's way over there that like 7 people have gotten in the last 25 years. You'll win a free game of golf. It's kind of like that. Your odds aren't great, but you're going to play the card because it's been handed to you. And if you don't, it's just going to end up in your wallet. And 20 years later, you're going to be like, oh, I got a free game of golf at Pirates Cove. Oh, didn't they tear that down and put a Subway there 10 years ago? It's that sort of thing. It didn't work. I've never seen it work. His argument was pointed. We haven't heard a word from a single homicide detective. And that's a good point. Carroll said, though there were at least 12 in place at the time, he noted that the prosecution's entire case rested heavily on the testimony of Juliana Peres Magalhães, a woman who admittedly participated in the killings, who has changed her story multiple times, and who has a powerful incentive to blame Brendan Banfield for everything in order to minimize her own culpability. There's nothing that would implicate my client, Carroll said. The judge, it was a situation not of my client's making. Prosecutor Jenna Sands fired back, saying the killings, she argued, were staged by the defendant with the assistance of the nanny. The evidence of premeditation, the Commonwealth maintains, speaks for itself. The fake online profile, the lurid victim, the coordinated alibis, the forensic staging of the crime scene. This wasn't a home invasion gone wrong, is what prosecutors contended. This was a calculated double murder. Judge Askerett denied the motion, as expected. Sorry, you didn't make that putt. No free game for you. The case now goes forward. The jury will decide whether the prosecution proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. So now we pivot. 4 days of the Commonwealth lying out the theory of what happened, if they take it. Now the defense gets their turn. Carroll told the judge she plans to call 4 or 5 witnesses. We don't know yet who they'll be or what they'll say. But after days of listening to prosecutors describe an elaborate murder for love conspiracy, complete with a fetish website, honey trap, a Brazilian au pair turned cooperating witness, noise-reducing windows allegedly installed to muffle gunshots, and a McDonald's drive-through alibi, the defense will finally have the opportunity to tell a different story. Maybe they'll attack the forensic. Maybe they'll offer alternative experts who interpret the blood evidence differently. Maybe they'll put character witnesses on the stand or challenge the timeline or argue that Juliana Peres Magalhães orchestrated the whole thing and is now pinning it on Brendan to save herself. Carroll has been hinting at that theory throughout his cross-examinations, that the au pair is the real mastermind, that she manipulated Banfield, that she's the one who should be on trial for murder rather than walking away with a manslaughter plea and a recommendation for time served. Whatever the defense presents, they have a mountain to climb. The prosecution spent 4 days constructing a narrative supported by digital evidence, DNA analysis, surveillance footage, and forensic interpretation. They have a cooperating witness who says she was there, who says she participated, and who says Brendan Banfield planned the whole thing. Here's the thing about criminal trials. The prosecution always goes first. They always get to build their case without interruption, present their evidence in the order they choose, and shape the narrative before the defense has a chance to respond. What matters now is whether John Carroll can create enough doubt to fracture that narrative. He doesn't need to prove Brendan Banfield is innocent. He just needs one juror to believe the prosecution didn't prove he's guilty. And this is where things stand as the prosecution rests its case. Brendan Banfield allegedly spent months constructing what prosecutors describe as the perfect crime. A catfish profile on a fetish website, the grooming of a stranger who would unknowingly walk into his own death, the gun range trips with his mistress to make sure she could handle a firearm, the triple-pane windows to keep the neighbors from hearing gunshots, the phone calls choreographed to create an alibi, the staged 911 call where he played the panicked husband who just shot an intruder. Every detail planned according to the Commonwealth, every contingency considered, a scheme so elaborate it sounds like the plot of a Netflix thriller, which, if Juliana's jailhouse letters are to be believed, it might actually become. And according to the prosecution, all of it fell apart because of one thing. Brendan Banfield apparently didn't consider blood doesn't lie. It flows where gravity takes it. It splatters according to the laws of physics and leaves patterns that trained analysts can read like a story written in red. When you move a dead man's body to reposition him, when you drip your wife's blood onto his hands and clothes to frame him for murder, you leave behind evidence that tells a story you never wanted anyone to hear. The prosecution believes the blood speaks for itself. The defense says the Commonwealth is listening to the wrong voice. Now we find out what story John Carroll wants to sell. Your part of the conversation is waiting for it to be told in our comment section on YouTube or on our Substack. So, let's hear it. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this case. Join us there on YouTube. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, or like I said, our Substack. Join it right now. It's absolutely free. There is no paywall. Come on in to our community over there and give us your thoughts. You also get access to our reporting a day before everyone else gets it. So there's another advantage right there to join. Hiddenkillers.substack.com. The link is in the description as well. What do you think? What do you think? I've been kind of just, I'm kind of still trying to ride the middle here because I think there is a possibility both ways. Is it enough reasonable doubt? Got to hear what John has to say. I wouldn't be ready to render my verdict either if I were a juror. But I got to say, at the beginning, where I was feeling, some of this investigation, there's some red flags here. When you have all these investigators saying, yeah, we disagree with your storyline, and none of them are called to the stand by the prosecution, that says something. What it says is up for interpretation. It could just be, we read it this way, and we're very rigid in our thinking, and we somehow didn't process the idea that maybe they grabbed her laptop while she was in the house in another room or sleeping or whatever, and then did the bidding on there. So it looks like her. It's not a crazy concept. And if you're trying to sell this and create this whole storyline, it's kind of required planning. I don't think you're going to go, well, let's look all these things up on my devices and then say it was her, because you would know, you would hope you would know that could be figured out. And you think you're being really tricky using her devices. Maybe it's that simple. But him being at the McDonald's, her cell phone being in the kitchen drawer, the bat signal, the phone call to the McDonald's, and he shows back up as Superman. That to me is where it starts to get pretty damning. That to me is where it's like he wasn't at work and getting this shocking phone call. He's at McDonald's getting the bat signal and coming back home. And it's a deviation from his normal routine too. So if he went to McDonald's every day in the morning and this was kind of his thing, it wouldn't be weird. If it isn't, it's a little weird. It's a little weird. Again, your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, or on our Substack. And hey, if you don't mind, after you press subscribe, if you use Apple Podcasts, let me tell you, like 80-90% of all podcasts are downloaded through Apple Podcasts. So it matters what you guys think of the show over there, because it feeds it out to other folks, says, hey, you might like this. It does that based on you guys liking the show, watching the show, listening to the show, and your reviews. So if you're liking our reporting, if you're finding value in this, please do leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps that signal, and it's an absolutely zero-cost way you can support this program if you value what we're doing. So thank you in advance for leaving us a review. Leave us some thoughts on the case in the review section if you want on Apple Podcasts, or just tell us, if you like the show. We do appreciate that very much. So we got a couple seconds Apple Podcast review. Thank you in advance for that. All right. We'll continue our conversation in the comments on YouTube and Substack. Until then, I'm Tony Bruschi. We will talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.